Gumbolaya podcast, Esther Perel here with Jessica Massa talking about traditional relationships. You said something interesting to me. We're going to talk about it right now.
Okay.
Pause. Okay, this will be the intro.
Praise and production.
Traditional relationships. You threw me for a loop. You said, and please correct me if I misheard you. You said in a traditional relationship, people meet for the first time trying to establish an understanding of each other and awareness of each other. I actually would call traditional dating something very different. In my experience, the tradition of courting and pairing up came from small communities where people did know each other. So you grow up in an area where your families are, you know their family, they know your family, you know their mom and them, they know your mom and them, right? And then you become of age to where either you're allowed to pursue a special relationship, or you become aware that it's something that you want now, right? There's a phase when you're a little kid where it's like, ew, boyfriend, girlfriend, ew, right? You leave that, and that, some people get there early, some people get there later. But then you start to be like, hey, I actually want to be closer to another person that will be special for me, right? And then you start, you start your hunt, or you start to bait whatever side of the coin you're on. However, it was, if we go, back to Savannah, there would be the social groups, and you knew people. So my question is, why would you label the cold start to learning someone as a traditional form of dating where you don't know somebody? That's
a great point.
Yeah.
And I think I totally agree with you. So I think traditional, I think what I was meaning to say, but traditional was not the right word for it, is kind of explicit, straightforward dating. So I totally agree with you. And for the record, my preferred way of dating would be on the Savannah. Everybody hangs out. They go, I like you a little more than everyone else. Guess we're doing this. So I agree with you. That's historically much more how people connected and got together. What I did hear in the years of talking to people about their love lives was that what makes what you're talking about, I also don't know if it feels quite traditional at this point, is that maybe in the past, when, let's talk like in a heteronormative space, maybe in the past there were not a lot of reasons for men and women to spend time together. So it pretty quickly went from, I'm in this church community, this school community, I like you, let's date, let's get married. That's how my grandparents met. I get it.
I'll follow what you mean.
Now, there's tons of ambiguity. There are so many ways, again, heteronormative, just for a moment, there's so many ways and reasons that men and women might interact. So what I heard a lot was people, and this was true 10 years ago. I think if you take away app dating right now, I still hear it a lot. People are very unsure what relationships might eventually turn romantic, might not, just like you and your, she spent years being like, he must not like me because he's not pursuing me anymore in that way. You're like, I had no idea. Like, that is so normal now that, because we're now at a time in history where you guys could be friends, and that's totally normal. So nobody needed to say, I guess, my family jokes sometimes that one of my sets of grandparents probably just should have been friends. Like they could have been friends. They probably would have been friends and then married other people. Their marriage was not, they got divorced eventually. It was not the right fit for them. But that just wasn't an option. They probably had 3 good conversations. We're like, I guess we have to do this now. And that's a bummer, although grateful for, everyone it birthed and for me. But so I think I guess what I meant by traditional, but that's not the right word, explicit, is what I found people really yearning for when I talked, for this project, for my book in 2012, I spent a year traveling around the country talking to people, like hundreds of people, about dating.
Let's offer the name of the book. Is
The Gaggle, How to Find Love in the Post-Dating World.
The Gaggle, How to Find Love in a
Post-Dating World.
Post-Dating World. Look it up. I'm going to get it as well, and I'm going to read it. I haven't yet. I probably should have. Like, I feel like
here's
that
part of what I would say. No,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that if anyone wants to read it, that's lovely and I appreciate it. And would love to. It's always meaningful and fun to engage in. But part of why I feel like things are so different 10 years later, 11 years after that came out was at the time, app dating and even online dating had not blown up yet. So not as many people were doing it. If they were, they felt quiet and sort of ashamed about it. So people were sort of only dealing with the ambiguity of these social networks, professional networks, which, the other side of the argument is I obviously interviewed tons of couples. And if you can work your way through that ambiguous murkiness, it's often a truly beautiful, real, genuine connection at the end.
Yeah, which is the goal.
Yes.
Yeah.
But like you and your friend, which again, very glad that you ended up with Kelly, but that can not happen all the time. Like the ambiguity can just like mess things up. Your insecurities get involved, the timing's off. And so I heard a lot of yearning at that point for something that felt clear. So I'm not surprised that in the time since, app dating has now become, now if you, and I'll say this as a single woman, if I say, oh, like it'd be fun to meet someone right now, to fall in love, people just immediately go, are you on the apps? Like that. And if I say no, and I just happen to not be on the apps, but nothing's wrong with them.
I was going to that question.
Yeah,
that's the world I was never part of either.
Profiles that friends have done after a couple of beers when we're out one night, so they exist. But I'm not, again, nothing opposed. I just keep waiting for a moment where I'm excited to, and it hasn't hit yet. But if you say, oh, I think being in love is great. And then someone says, are you on the apps? And you say, no, I'm not. Then they just go, it's like, well, then of course, like, how would you ever meet someone? And you're just like, what about like living in the world? And everyone's like, no, like get on the apps. And I do think the apps, like what's amazing.
I think that's much more like evident of the microwave mentality that's been normalized. Like it's like, why do something the long way if it works when you can do it the short way and it seems to work? And I'm like, but is it working for you though? Like,
well, it depends what the problem, or not the problem, what's hard about it. What's hard is that you're not meeting people you're excited by or excited by you. The beauty of the apps is just, it opens up your circle, or I have friends who like work nights or like doctors and work, like they don't have time to live a life where they're just bumping into people all the time. So I think there's pros to it. And for some people, the pro of knowing that we are going to go hang out and test each other for romantic compatibility. For some people, that's like very calming and helpful. But I don't think it should be considered the only way people can connect. And I think everything we were talking about with communication gets really helpful if you are also trying to live in a more ambiguous space, but find real connection. Because at some point, just like that conversation you and your friend had, some point, somebody needs to say something real and they need to figure out what they actually want and they need to express it. And I think that's a skill that's really hard. Like we were talking about before, like the more we're on technology, the less used to we are sitting across from someone and saying something. Like I have had like my heart broken sitting in front of people before, and it's brutal, but like you have to go through it. And I'm way more happy that we did that than like I sent them a text message. They ghosted me. Like I'd rather sit with you and go, love me. And they go, no, I don't think so. But at least like that is human connection. That's real. That was like closure in a way that, other things wouldn't have been. So
I think that's where earlier I mentioned to you that it seemed to bother me more when dudes would be disconnected sitting across from a woman, because where I'm from, I don't know whether it's the area I grew up or just the particular people I was around, but I was kind of groomed to believe that you have a responsibility as a man to take the risk of relationship, because she has to protect herself from weirdos, and you know what I'm saying? And so the idea was very much like, you need to make it clear that your interest is more than just, I think you're pretty, I want to touch something. You know what I mean? And because that was I never met anyone until I got old enough and I started meeting people who like had jerk philosophies, like where they were predators. You know what I mean? I never heard a different alternative perspective that felt healthy. The closest I could get was, as I got older, I did hear more people talking about, thinking twice about accepting the idea that a woman who is assertive and direct should feel any kind of shame about it. Like that because I'm not a female, I was never a part of any other kind of conversation. So I'm like, well, yeah, of course. Like, why wouldn't a woman be allowed to say what she wants and do what she wants? And I wasn't from an environment where that was ever a question, you know what I mean? But I wouldn't get that because I'm a dude, And so as I got older and I would be talking to, most of my friends have always been female and they're usually older. I would hear these conversations start. And then also like publicly, you start to hear the conversation on talk shows and stuff like that. But my point was just, I was kind of raised to believe that when you want to pursue a relationship past whatever is kind of already in place, the guy has to say it. And you have to be respectful about it or whatever. And you have to prepare yourself for the fact that she might not be interested. Like you'll toss a lot of lines in the water before you get a bite. And then when you do, I mean, not to be disrespectful and to put y'all in the fish.
No,
you know what I mean?
Course.
But just more so, you got to go through the effort. You got to go out and find, you know what I mean? Her responsibility is to be. Your responsibility is to say, I see who you be, and then y'all work on whether or not it's going to work. So the dating app thing, I was considering trying some of the websites right before I met Kel. And I saw a lot of people have success with some of the sites. It was Match.com, eHarmony, stuff like that. OkCupid, I think, was a site, before the app.
For sure.
And there was some success stories. But I didn't get into it quickly because I used to enjoy looking at classifieds and laughing my butt off. I'm trying to discuss. But it was funny to me to see how crazy, I shouldn't say the word crazy. You don't like that word. How all the interesting ways that people would decide to show themselves. That's a good way to say it. Yeah. It was fascinating and entertaining to see all of the different creative ways that people would say, here is who I am, or rather, this is what you should know about me first. That was interesting stuff. And it was everything from left to right and up to down. I don't want to get specific, but that was entertaining to me. So the idea of trying to figure out, what do I present to someone on this app about me, took my head to all this crazy stuff. Like, do I need to, work out for a couple years first and get the softness firmed up? You know what I mean? Do I need to go rock climbing or something? Like, what am I supposed to do?
You think about how to brand yourself. Yeah. You're basically having to go through a personal branding exercise.
And that was that was weird for me. I'm like, I never thought about selling myself because I am so comfortable talking to somebody. I can be like, this is me. Ask me anything you want to know. We can be as tight as you want or not. So, at first it wasn't, it's all good. Now I'm much more like, take me or leave me. It's all good. But my point is just, I was very comfortable talking to people for the purposes of a friendship or more, so much so that a lot of my male friends would get frustrated with me because they would be interested in someone. I would meet the someone, and then the someone is paying attention to me. And I'm not interested at all. And I'm like, dude, you go in with stress. Just talk.
Yeah.
She's a human being. Yes, she's pretty. But do the human being part first. Let her see your human being. And usually you kind of figure some stuff out. If it don't work, it don't work.
My guy friends who lead with, not in a manipulative way, just because of where they've evolved to, who lead with vulnerability and interest. I'm like, if you could just teach that, like even if men were manipulatively just trying to get as many options as they could, you're like, it's so obvious, like bring some vulnerability to the table, be genuinely interested in her and dig in. And like, 9 times out of 10, her attention will shift away from the guy in the room who's like trying to posture.
Okay, I follow what you mean.
The difference between your guy friend who's like, I'm into her, and whatever he thought he had to project in order to be attractive, which it sounds like is not like vulnerability and authenticity and interest. Sounds like he was like trying to macho up or something.
We got to touch that because I've heard so many different positions on the idea of male vulnerability in dating and in attractiveness. So when you say it's appealing and a positive thing for you to speak to someone who offers vulnerability like from the get-go, what does that mean for you though?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm trying to think about it from my perspective and not just like, what do I think it means?
We can start with the umbrella term. What is
I mean, it's helpful to think of it, like in the individual sense too. I think part of what it means for me, or something that I find I sort of am clocking for, is genuine emotion reaction. So I even think sometimes we think of vulnerability as coming and performing your trauma, which is not what I mean right off the bat, especially. But like if I'm getting to know a guy and he gets really excited about something, like we get on some topic and he is nerding out, right? Or his hands start flying and he like hits the food off the table because he's been like so animatedly explaining something.
Okay.
I actually think that's incredibly vulnerable. Like it's really vulnerable to show that you care about something. I think a guy who's willing to talk about dreams that he has, that's vulnerable. Like to say, I might want something and I might not get it and I might get it. Like that's vulnerable. Like that's really different than sitting around just going, I am impervious to all human and life experience. Like
it sounds like for you, it sounds like openness. Like someone who's kind of open to being themselves fully and expressing it.
Yes. And it's kind of the opposite in my mind of being cool, like being reserved.
Got it.
I think nothing about being reserved feels vulnerable. You just feel not like chill. I love a chill person, guy, girl, human. Like I love chill environments. But like reservedness and coolness is really hard. What do you connect with? Like, and I think we also are all have our own like dreams and passions and fears and insecurities. And we want to feel like eventually maybe this person will accept that. And if they don't even seem to accept it in themselves, I feel like sometimes it's a signal of just like, they're going to like the version of me that's also reserved, or also like we all, to your point about branding, like I can know exactly, because I have profiles on the apps that my friends have set up with me after a couple of years. And I have like match sometimes when I'm bored, I'll just sit there and like see who's alive. I can tell 95% of the time what parts of my profile are going to be the thing that guys respond to. It's like clockwork. It's like I have a mention of the living in Greece, doing archaeology in a fishing village.
That's pretty interesting.
It is like the thing that I'm just like done, and it is a part of me. It's also something I did when I was 23. So I'm also like, if you think you're meeting the person who tomorrow is going to go live in a tent in a fishing village, you're going to be disappointed. I'm just telling you something that's part of my story.
That makes sense.
But like, just like all of the data and feedback loops that we're getting in the world, like in dating, you're like getting a feedback loop about what people like about you. And it's really tempting to gear yourself towards that. So it's like, am I still exactly the person who went on that Greek trip? Like,
of course not.
No, but I think you like again, these very human feedback loops go like, that's the part of me you're most interested in. Like, I should probably be more like that, right? I should like lean into that part of myself, or not share the parts of myself that feel different. And I think that's not like what builds something healthy. But I think that, I guess like what I appreciate about vulnerability, and I guess like I said, excitement about things and passion, but also of course, if we get into a conversation about family, if we get into a conversation about mental health, like just, again, I don't think like trauma performance necessarily super helpful very early in getting to know anyone, but like, I think that acknowledging that you're a complex person is actually, at least past a certain age, just like very attractive.
But that makes sense to me. Are you aware that there is a very large community of males and females who do not believe that that's attractive? Like I've had a lot of conversations, usually with, I've had conversations with both males and females who who say the exact opposite, particularly a lot of guys who teach and encourage other guys to minimize their emotional expressiveness because of the amount of women who find it unattractive, and that decreases your likelihood of a physical connection.
I definitely think that's real and challenging. And it's something, even with my female friends, I feel like I'm always trying to encourage them to validate and appreciate the men in their lives when they are coming with vulnerability, because I know that all of them probably have it in different moments. And then also like just to the extent that we all reward each other's behavior, like show that it was okay and it makes them more lovable. I do think like, it makes me think a couple things. One thing is I do think it's unattractive to be bait and switched. And I think a lot of people do that. So I think that a lot of, again, I say this about like the men in my life I love to death. Like I see them meet someone, I see a lot of posturing going on, a lot of trying not to be vulnerable. And then 2 years into that relationship, now you're in it. All of a sudden, you're this like other person half the time. And that partner is like,
take 2 years.
No, probably not.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you led with a more honest depiction of like who you are and where you're at, it might not minimize, it just might lessen the number of people who right off the bat are like, I definitely want to make this happen. But it's going to be more lasting because it's honest. And I understand when I have female friends come to me and go, I've been with this guy for 8 months. He was like this for the first 6. And now like he's having trouble at work. And all of a sudden he's like devastated all the time. And he's like, won't get off the couch. And like, just who is this person? And like, maybe if early in the relationship, they're like, here's all the things that I feel really strong and great. Sometimes when stuff gets hard, like here's where I dip into, but here's all the work I'm doing. Because the other thought I have is like vulnerability to me also doesn't mean like wallowing. And obviously like mental health is different, but I think what I see in a lot of the relationships around me, this is not a gender thing, it's for everybody. Like expressing vulnerability is really beautiful. Expecting someone else to solve the things that are hard for you is very different. And sometimes if we do make it gendered, for some of my female friends, what I see with their partners is when their partners are struggling, and yes, they are like now being vulnerable, but they're also not taking on a lot of like their own accountability to work through that. And so is it the vulnerability that's unattractive? Is it all of a sudden the lack of accountability? Is it the hoping that this person's going to mother you and somehow get you out of this? Like, I think it's really hard to piece apart.
Very much so, yeah.
So I actually, my guess, I'd love for like real studies and looking into this. My guess is that it's not the vulnerability that's really unattractive. It's the things that come along often with that vulnerability. And also because men are not encouraged to be vulnerable with each other. They often also don't have other friends. Like you, the way that you speak, just in general, and how verbal you are and how open you are is still extremely rare. And I'm sure a lot of your guy friends are like, what are we doing? Like, I don't, and so a lot of my male friends have much deeper relationships with women than they do with other men. Yeah. So also it can be heavy if you're like, this person is only being vulnerable with me. Like I'm expected to hold all of this versus like in this moment, I'm feeling it. Yeah. That's a lot of responsibility.
It really is.
And I think that women almost never have their male partner is almost never the only person they're like emoting to and working through something with. And so I feel like that could be part of it too.
That's the light that went off in the class I told you about, in the sociology class. I knew that there was something different about me when I was very young, probably around middle schoolish is when I started to feel it. I didn't feel relaxed and at peace hanging around all dudes, right? It didn't feel the same. Like, I had definitely had some male friends that I got along with better or whatever, but I started to notice a lot of difference and interest because a lot of the things that, you have groups of friends based off of things that you like to do together. You got a movie group or whatever, right? It wasn't necessarily that because, even if you go to stereotypical guy things like sports, for example. I'm not a sports person at all. I appreciate it. I'll watch it, if it's on or whatever, especially if it's a social occasion, watching a game. But I don't watch games at all by myself. Mm-hmm. I don't follow. I don't know who's, I remember talking to somebody about a player and they kind of looked at me funny. I was like, what? It was like, dude, he's been retired for like forever. And I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So not specific stuff like that, but just the fact that most of my close friends and the people that I look forward to seeing were female. And so when that came up in the class, when he talked about that females are usually encouraged to play in ways that are cooperative, and I can't remember the word that relates to everybody being at the same level, instead of hierarchy. What's the opposite of hierarchy?
Like horizontal?
That, when he talked about, those differences, it made sense. And then he kind of explained, and that's why usually the struggle in most heterosexual and heteronormative relationships are a female coming to terms with the fact that men's communication is very different, if equal. Like, because a lot of times you'll have a situation where a female is trying to communicate and guys just shut down. They get cold because they don't know what to do. They feel powerless. They feel embarrassed. They feel confused. And that stuff usually comes out in a secondary emotion of anger and frustration. And it's you. And I'm like, maybe it's because you don't know how to talk about something that she's saying. So now that y'all have been dating for the 8 months or whatever, and you start to have trouble at work, she's seeing that you have addressed depression. Well, that's a big takeaway within a relationship if you have never been, I guess, comforted in that area of struggle, if you don't even know you have it, right? So it was fascinating for me to hear how that stuff can kind of happen, because I saw it, but I didn't have any I guess labels to put on it. And most of my male friends are a bit closer to me in terms of their ability to at least be respectful and put effort into sharing. Maybe not, nobody's perfect or whatever, but I can't be close to people that can't communicate their thoughts and feelings, because then I don't enjoy the relationship.
Yeah.
So it's usually friends of friends or like the boyfriend of a close, female friend of mine or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, that dude, I get it, So you're talking before about how it's attractive to you to meet someone. To me, it just sounds like that has a certain peace and a strong sense of self. Someone who is comfortable to kind of be present, and someone who's not going through the motion. So what I wanted to ask you, along that train of thought is, you spend a lot of time researching, writing, interviewing people, focusing on relationship stuff. What have been your huge takeaways? The things that are consistently, that consistently hold true outside of circumstance, outside of gender, outside of region, outside of age. Like what are the big takeaways? So someone comes to you, hey, I just met someone very interesting, very fascinating to me. I want to start this right. What do I do? How do I approach them? How do I talk about it? We're going on a date. What do I do? What would you say?
It's a great question. And one thing I'd say is that also gets hard to answer in each life phase, just because so now a lot of what I'm thinking about, so many of my conversations with the people around me, is about the phase of life of marriage and like very long-term partnership. Right. And now people have been together for 10 years. Like the conversations we're having, that there are totally a lot of commonalities, are so different than the commonalities when we were 27, 28, like wildly different. Like, so there's also this part of me that's like, there's another phase of life that I'm really interested in exploring in a bit more of a scientific, sociological lens, which is, okay, like our generation reaching this midlife point. And I think something I heard 10 years ago was we were all so convinced we were going to do it better and different than what we'd seen from our families. And have we, or have these problems just presented in a different way? Or do we have new struggles that they didn't have? Like I
think all are true.
Yeah,
I think all of those things are true.
Exactly. So just to say, I think I don't know if there's too many things across the board from when you're 27 to when you're 40. Like I think different things end up mattering. But I do think one of the big things, and this is if you have, I don't know if you've listened to Esther Perel. She's a relationship psychologist.
Esther Perel?
Esther Perel, yeah.
Say it again.
Esther, Esther Perel, Perel. She's probably the world's most famous relationship psychologist, and she is like my personal idol and queen. So she just a million podcasts and books about all sorts of things. But one of the things she talks about a lot, which matches with a lot of the things I found, is that we now expect one person to fill what a whole village used to fill. And so I think whether that's on a first date, whether that's in a relationship, we were not built to have this one other person have to check every box in our lives.
That's a good one.
To have that pressure on each other, to also be judging each other with that being the rubric.
Yeah, I got to admit,
you're setting yourself up to lose.
I got that from Kelly. Like, because, the longer you with somebody, the higher the highs and the lower, you know what I mean? You go through life learning. And I remember her saying to me, I often don't know how to deal with the pressure of being your everything. I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, you love me at a level that people dream of. And I often don't know how to be that dream in all of these different aspects of life, because your interaction with other people has changed since we met. I was incredibly social when we met. And, as we've been together, I'm actually happy with her. And, she said something very similar, and it made me think about the fact that I do ask, not ask, because it's not conscious. I do pull so much of my desire to connect with people and be loved by people and to be around and interact, whatever, from her specifically. And that's a lot to ask of one person.
Not to put that on you, but it's so much to ask of one person who also is.
That's a big one.
When I do think, not to oversimplify around gender at all, but everything we were talking about, even about male friendships, like that, so many of the men I know, as they get it, like they find their person and they're like, oh wait, great. Like this person fills almost everything. And they sort of stop investing in their male friendships. They don't invest as deeply. Like I have so many guy friends who have guys who they consider their best friends, who they don't even see once a year. And I'm like, if you don't see that guy once, everyone has an off year, but like if you're not planning a vacation with this friend, you guys aren't on the phone a lot. This is not feeding you in the way that your partner would probably be like, it's funny. I feel like we grew up and there's the idea of like, oh, men are going to want guys' nights and he's going to go out to the boys or the bar. Most of my female friends in heteronormative relationships are like, oh my God, please go out with your male friends. Like,
I don't do it.
Like I go out because my friends, we go on girls' trips all the time. And I'm always like, what's this spouse doing while you're gone? And half the time I'll say, she's like, hang out on the couch, like going for a run. Like they haven't maintained these other connections
you kinda
enough.
Close to home.
Sorry. No, it's okay. It's never, or even just the way what we're talking about, how men interact. Again, this is so overgeneralizing. And there's men like you and all of my male friends. And again, I love my friends' partners. Like, so it's, I think there are so many incredible men in the world. I think it's something about how we're socialized. But like, I was in the car with a very good friend of ours. And she and I was like, oh, like what's going on with your friends from grad school? I've met them like 3 times, but I know them. I remember them. She's like, this is like how their job's going. And then their like marriage is going this way, or they just like moved to this place. She's running through it. And then her brother turned around from the front and was like, I just want to say, I could not tell you these things about my best friends. And we're like, really? How often do you talk to them? And he's like, oh, every day. Like we have a text thread. We're like, what are you texting about?
Oh, I thought you meant like they rarely talk, but they don't talk about.
I mean, they talk every day, but
I got you.
Not about like his partner knew about one of his friends' breakups like before he did. And so that's also fun. I have friend groups where we're just having fun. I love that. I also again, like I don't want to have deep talks every single time I'm sitting with anybody. But you're not talking to your friends enough that you know how they're feeling about their careers, how they're feeling about their family, then all of those men, all that pressure is going on their partner. And then no wonder, one, that vulnerability might feel like a lot for their partner. Two, like, there's all that research that men take breakups way harder because women, it's terrible, but your network wraps you and they go, we're going on a girls trip and you can call me anytime. Let me make you dinner. And guys
also,
are just...
You're allowed to feel that for as long as you need to. With guys, I mean, I remember going through a breakup when I was younger, and I had certain guy friends that, I could be myself with, and they were more mature because most of my friends have always been older. But I remember talking to a guy my age, and I was talking about, how I was feeling because I really cared about this lady, and she, the breakup was very bad. And so, I was still, I had a lot of feelings going on.
Sure.
And, I wasn't, breaking down or anything in the conversation, but I really was just saying, it hurt a lot. I feel really bad about it or whatever. I really liked it or whatever. And he asked me when it was. And I told him, and I think it had been like a month or two or something like that. And he was like, you still worrying about old girl after 2 months? And I remember thinking it never occurred to me to consider the amount of time. And it's because most of my emotional support were females. It's old. I have older sisters. I have older friends that I was tight with. And none of the conversations were about time. It was crap. I said the word time and I try to break every 30 minutes. It's hard with, when I'm talking with like you and Kel and people where it's just a nice game of tennis. I hit the ball back. We got to cut. I was totally sharing. I was being vulnerable and everything, just like she's teaching me. So we're going to cut. We're going to continue on. I don't know what part we're on right now, but we're ending this segment, going to the next segment. Gumbolaya Podcast, C.A. Purcell, Jessica Massa. Let's specifically focus on the book, if you don't mind, in the next section, because this is fun for me, and we'll talk more. So Gumbolaya Podcast, me, come back, click it, like, subscribe, share, comment, do all of the things. Put me on your social media page and say words and do things and all the things I'm supposed to say. Okay, bye.
If it's my time, then it's my time. Worry about yours, 'cause I got mine. 'Cause I got mine. Worry about yours, 'cause I got mine. 'Cause I got mine. Praise and production.